Over these many years, it has sometimes been said that we have to become divine scientists and divine magicians and divine philosophers. And perhaps we've wondered what that means. But it still is relevant for us now. To create somewhat of a little possibility that we can put it together, so to speak. I read the other day that the great scientist, philosopher Tesla has said that if mankind knew the significance of the numbers 3, 6, and 9, they would have the secret to all of creation. In those years with Divine Mother, she would very often say, even the angels have to come down from heaven to take the 9th pathway to the One. Wonder what it is that this could mean. There's a story about 2 brothers. One was very, very rich, but he was also very greedy and very miserly. The second brother was very poor, a simple man, kind. But both brothers, like most of those at that time, kept the religious laws of the day. And there was one day out of all of the year, as in most traditions, that was above all others and kept in the ways that were the custom of the day. Breaking the bread, having a harvest feast. There are many ways that this day is celebrated. So both these brothers would have their days of celebration. But the poor brother would often find himself in the situation that there was not enough money to buy the flour to make the bread that would be broken or used as a celebration on this day. So he would demean himself and go to his rich brother's house and beg for help. Now, most of the time, the brother would give him what it was that he asked for. But there was one occasion when the poor brother came to his rich brother that the brother had decided he was not going to give alms this year. So he refused. The poor brother begged and begged until the rich brother got angry and he said, "Go to Azazel," which really means go to hell. And the poor brother, being a simple man, not knowing the stories, heaven and hell and all of that stuff, he thought that his brother was telling him to go and find an Azazel who was going to be able to give him the flour that he needed for this very special day. So he went back to his family and he said, "My brother has told me I have to go to Azazel." So he set out. He set out on this journey. And everywhere he went, he asked those he met, could they point him to Azazel? And some of them laughed at him. Some of them gave him a crust of bread. But then one evening when it was growing dark and he was in a forest, he saw a light in a small house in the forest. So he went over to that house, thinking that they might give him hospitality for the night. And when he was invited in, he found that the house was inhabited by 3 maidens who were weavers. And they were weaving thread, each of a different kind. One was weaving thread of gold, the second was weaving thread of silver, and the third was weaving thread of brass. Now they gave him hospitality for the night, but he noticed that all 3 of them had a very sad demeanor. So he asked them, why was it that they were looking so unhappy? And they all said, we've been weaving this thread endlessly in the hope that we could make this thread into a wedding gown. If 3 men came along to claim us as their brides. Oh, said the poor man, I'm going to Azazel. I'll ask what it is that can be done. So he went off and set off on his quest once again. After some time, again it was the heat of the day, and he decided to sit under a great lush tree. And as he sat there, somewhat dozing, he felt his stomach grumbling and looked up to see that the tree was laden with fruit. But when he picked one of the fruit was bitter and sour. And he said, oh, I wonder why this tree is so lush and beautiful, and yet the fruit is so bitter. And the tree groaned and spoke to him, said, yes, I know. There is something that's impeding the flow into my roots that provide the sweetness for my fruit. The poor man said, well, I'm going to Azazel. I'll ask if anything can be done for you. And so he set off on his way. And he came to a wide flowing river, wondering how he could get across when he saw a ferry boat. So he went to the ferryman asking could he be taken across to the other side. And as they were crossing, the poor man noticed that the ferryman was very sad. So he asked him, why is it that you are so melancholy? The ferryman said, I have taken so many across this river, but I am unable to leave this boat myself. It seems that I'm destined to go back and forth endlessly. Oh, said the poor man, I'm going to Azazel. I'll ask. And so he set off. It came again to evening time, and he was cold and hungry and tired, and he saw a hut in the forest. And so he went and knocked on the door, seeking hospitality. The door opened, and it was an old woman. And she invited him in, gave him hot soup, and sat him down by the fire that burned in the hearth, and asked him what it was that he was doing on these travels. And he explained to her and said, yes, and I met 3 maidens who have a problem. They wish to be married, but have not found those who would wed them. And I met a tree whose fruit is so bitter and sour. The tree knows that there is something which is impeding its roots. And I met a ferryman who seems endlessly going back and forth across the river. Oh, said the old woman, you've come to the right place. My name is Azazel. So after having the hospitality, the old woman said to the poor man, tell the 3 maidens that if they stop their weaving and make their wedding gowns, they will be wed. Tell the tree that if it will allow you to dig at its roots, there will be revealed to you a treasure that will enrich you for the rest of your life. This is impeding the flow to the fruit of the tree. And the ferryman, tell him, when he can find someone to take over his role, he will be released from the need to go back and forth across the great river. So the poor man, thanking the old woman Azazel, set off back to his house. When he met the ferryman, he told him, when you can find someone to take your place, you will be free to alight from your ferry boat. Then he went on to the tree, and seeking its permission, he dug under its roots, and indeed found the treasure. Then he went to the maidens, and was again invited in for hospitality. He told them what had been advised, and they immediately set about making their wedding gowns. The very next day, after their working all night, the gowns were finished. And as the poor man, now a rich man, left the house, 3 handsome males riding on their horses came by and fell in love with the maidens who were farewelling the poor man. And so they had their husbands. And so the poor man went back to his house, and there was great celebration. They had wheat to make the bread for the celebrations. And of course, this came to the ears of the rich brother, wanting to know how his poor brother was now having such great wealth. And so the poor man related what had happened to him. So of course the rich man immediately set out to take the steps that his poor brother had taken. But of course the 3 maidens were married. He didn't meet them. And the tree in its abundance had already provided sweet fruit for all those who had come. But then he got to the ferry boat, and as they landed on the far shore, the ferryman hopped out of the boat, leaving the rich man to the fate of having to ferry the boat back and forth and back and forth. So we have this seeming conundrum, the significance of the 3, 6, 9, and this saying of Divine Mothers, even the angels have to come down and take the 9th pathway to the One. How do we put together those aspects of life represented by these numerals so that we can find an answer, find the secret, and find the answer to what it was the Divine Mother said. So again, like so often, the question is asked, what is it that arises for you without mental machination, but rising out of the feeling that the stories evoke? How would you interpret that which this story has brought up for you?